Tonight, new details on the immigration order that's causing so much confusion. So here's the question. Why were political operatives kept in the loop, but the national security guys on the outside looking in? Then, President Trump cans the acting attorney general for refusing to act on his immigration order. Now, the firing's one thing, but did he need to attack her character on the way out the door? Also, President Trump announcing the Supreme Court nominee just 2 hours from now. We'll look at who it is and what they stand for. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French. Thank you so much for joining us on a very busy Tuesday. Well, today we have got more questions and concerns about Trump's immigration order that caused all the confusion this weekend, and also on whether or not it's a travel ban or not.
I will not gamble with American lives.
The Secretary of Homeland Security defended the president's executive order.
This is not a travel ban. Furthermore, this is not, I repeat, not a ban on Muslims.
The nation sharply divided over the ban of all refugees and nationals of 7 predominantly Muslim countries for a period of 4 and 3 months, respectively. While some see it as a campaign promise fulfilled, former acting Attorney General Sally Yates questioned the legality and the morality of the executive order. President Trump responded by firing her. While today Democrats are questioning the nomination of Senator Sessions for Attorney General,
will he carry out and enforce the president's actions that may very well violate the Constitution?
2 years earlier, the tables were turned, as it was Senator Sessions who questioned Yates and her ability to say no to then-President Obama.
But if the views the president wants to execute are unlawful, should the Attorney General or the Deputy Attorney General say no?
Senator, I believe that the Attorney General or the Deputy Attorney General has an obligation to follow the law and the Constitution.
As the president met with pharmaceutical leaders at the White House, he declined to answer questions on this topic. But he tweeted his disapproval earlier in the day, writing, "When will the Democrats give us our Attorney General and the rest of the cabinet? They should be ashamed of themselves. No wonder D.C. doesn't work." Now, getting back to what exactly it was this weekend and the question and confusion about this immigration order. Of course, when the questions keep coming up, the White House press secretary says, well, you should blame the media.
So, I mean, with all due respect, I think you have been part of the confusion. You have helped cause this, despite claims to whatever. You claim that you have sources that tell us. General Kelly stands up and says, this is how many times I've been briefed, this is how many people are involved, and yet you were out there for...
There was a New York Times report that was cited.
Okay, so I apologize that NBC News' reporting is based on the New York Times false reporting.
We'll get into more about Spicer and the media and the use of the word ban. But joining us now is Ted Hesson. He is an employment and immigration reporter with Politico. So it turns out, after all, it's all your fault, the media here, that the confusion over the travel ban, according to Sean Spicer, at least in the administration, lies directly at the feet of the media. Everything went fantastically. I guess my question is, you prepared to show contrition here because the travel ban's confusions lie directly at your feet?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's much truth to that. I think anyone who's seen what's gone on here in the last few days would be hard-pressed to see anything but a scene of confusion. And it's not just confusion in airports where people are being held and lawyers aren't able to reach them. It also seems to be confusion within the administration itself in communicating with different parts of government.
Well, to that end, there was 2 very different narratives, Ted, as to what did or didn't happen. Multiple reporting took place that said not just at DHS, but at the Defense Department, up and down upper-level agencies, even with congressional offices, that different conversations were taking place with different folks. Some people were learning about it on the fly. But again, to hear the briefing that ended just a little while ago, Sean Spicer said that not only was everyone contacted and people that needed to know were involved with the crafting of the language, no one was surprised when this edict came down over the weekend. Which is true and which isn't?
I think there's probably some truth to both sides of that. I mean, I think there was communication with certain folks on the Hill, but it was a select group of people, a small group of people in a certain office. I think when it comes to the Department of Homeland Security, for instance, I do think what I heard today from Secretary John Kelly was that he did have some idea that something was coming and saw draft versions of this memo. Now, when he saw the actual final language is another question, and he didn't answer that exactly today.
We did hear, for example, that General Mattis at Defense was furious that some of the folks who worked with our military in Iraq, translators here, at great risk to themselves and their families, under this new ban would be denied entry. He apparently learned about it when the media did. What are you hearing in that regard?
I mean, I think and he's talking about something called a special immigrant visa, and that goes to translators and interpreters who worked with U.S. forces in Iraq, and it could be in Afghanistan as well. And some of those folks were getting stopped at the border and held and potentially faced getting turned around. And I think that's one of the things that illustrates the confusion over this policy. It wasn't clear what would happen to them when the order came out. And even today, I just learned at this press conference with Secretary John Kelly of DHS that special immigrant visa holders would actually be considered for waivers. And that's the first time I've heard something like that.
The actual plan behind this, and I'm not trying to get too forensics with the language here, but Ted, today Spicer said only you people, meaning the media, are calling this a ban. But Trump in his almost recent tweets called this a ban not once, but twice. And there is reporting, and Rudy Giuliani himself said, when asked about it, he said, the president asked me for my advice on how we could create a ban on Muslims, and this was the advice I gave them. Whether you call it a ban, you don't call it a ban, what was the intent of this beyond just protecting America? Who is it supposed to target beyond just the 7 nations that were mentioned? Was this against Muslims, or was it something else?
I mean, I think the first thing you have to look at is it's a very broad order, and it does affect these 7 nations that are majority Muslim. And I think I wouldn't call it a Muslim ban, but I would say it sends a message to folks from Muslim nations that their countries could face these sorts of restrictions. Now, don't forget that the entire refugee program was also put on pause. And you're talking about 110,000 people that come from all different parts of the world and come from different faith backgrounds as well. So this was a very broad measure in general, and could you call it a ban? Yeah, I mean, you could certainly call it a travel ban. I mean, that's practically what it is.
I know in your reporting, forget about what leadership was saying, the rank and file at DHS and those in Immigrations and Customs completely caught off guard by this, and over the course of 3 days they got 3 different messages as to who was allowed, who wasn't, dual citizenships, how to treat those people, etc. Again, we're told by the White House that this worked magnificently, I think was the word, and perfectly, and it's all in the eye of the beholder. From the folks that you spoke to that were at the ground trying to figure this out at the fly at these airports, did they share that same kind of rosy outlook on how the first 72 hours went down?
I spoke with someone who's a career DHS official and has worked on similar things like this in the past, and he told me he's really never seen anything like the rollout for this. In particular, when he looked at the order, he thought that even just a little more legal review or working with the different departments on this would have cleared up a lot of the questions in it, and some things that when he first saw it just seemed obvious to him that could have been corrected. And I think that's something common that you're hearing in different reports, that this policy, that while people might agree with it in spirit, they think that the drafting of the language in the policy was problematic, and then beyond that, the implementation. I mean, that's clearly been a problem, and that's something that people have acknowledged across the board. Maybe not the administration, but Republicans on the Hill, such as House Speaker Paul Ryan.
Ted, I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Coming up next, we're going to take a look at the disorderly way that this immigration order came together here. You heard Ted reference some of that. It also provides fresh insight into how this new administration works, who's calling the shots, and also fresh worries about where we may go next from here.